Well, we're going to get started, and yeah, just welcome everybody here. It sounds like it was a little bit tough getting here, traffic and heat, life, but you're here. We're glad you're here. We're excited. Yeah, we're going to be talking about conflict tonight, so that should be a
No, we're not.
barrel of fun.
That's
That's
not
fair.
for
Want to buy an
planning.
argument? Remember that Monty Python
Yeah.
argument thing? So anyway, we're going to do that, and so yeah, let's just we're going to open this up in prayer, and we'll get rolling.
Yeah. All right. Well, Lord, we just are so thankful for every person that is in here tonight. We ask for traveling mercies for those who are still on their way, and we ask for your blessing and healing on those who can't make it tonight because of sickness or any other reason. And Lord, I just thank you so much for bringing each person here to us, for knitting our hearts together with theirs, for the joy of being able to sow into their lives, and just pray that our words are taken by you tonight and empowered and, given just supernatural wisdom. And Lord, I just ask you to bless each and every marriage represented here, and the tenacity that each one of these people are showing by being here and desiring to have a better marriage. And as we talk about conflict and a few other things tonight, Lord, I pray that you just help everyone to really embrace and have soft soil in their hearts and be ready to receive that their way may not be the only way, and that this bear good fruit and help people to just have a sweeter and closer relationship. In Jesus' holy name.
Amen.
Amen.
Very
So
cool.
shall I start
Yeah,
with?
start with the logistics
Well, no,
stuff.
we'll do that at the
Do
end,
it
I
then?
guess.
Okay. We'll get rolling then. So, deep breath in through the mouth, out through the nose. Y'all had busy days, I'm sure, so it's sometimes hard to settle. But I'm glad you're here once again. So we're going to talk about conflict, and guess what? It's present in every marriage. No surprise there. And so a lot of times we look around the room and say, man, look at them. Boy, they sure have it all together. Wow. And you look at that and you think that, man, you already have an idea what's right or wrong going on in your relationship, and everybody puts a spit and polish on for Sunday, and you look around and everybody can seem all set. But the Bible tells us in Galatians 6, don't compare yourselves among yourselves for a very good reason, because that's exactly what we do. And so, but just know this, pretty sure if I asked you to raise your hand if you had conflict in your marriage, if you didn't have conflict in your marriage, there wouldn't be any hands going up.
So is there anybody here who has like a perfect marriage and never had a conflict in
Yeah.
a relationship?
So yeah, that's a slam dunk.
Go ahead, Stephen, I dare you.
Well, maybe Sam.
Yeah.
Right.
No conflict in his marriage.
Right, so that's the only one. So,
Maybe the first time. I'll say maybe them because they're so newly married.
there you go.
Yeah, I was like, that dated.
So the good news is every marriage has conflict in it, and every healthy marriage has conflict in it, because if you didn't, it wouldn't be real. And so you wouldn't have anything to work on. So no matter how much you love your partner, it's going to happen, and because you're two different people, you come from two different backgrounds, two different upbringings, two personalities, and so, with all that going on, it's not surprising you're going to have some conflict. And so, but the cool thing is when you both are determined to make it work, and you look at your marriage as a covenant versus a contract, and you're just willing to fight for it, like we talked before about fighting for your relationship with Jesus. That's, everything comes again, but you fight for that. Same kind of thing, fight for your marriage. And so that's, I think paramount to a good marriage, is being willing to fight for it. And so coming in, we all have a picture in our mind what our perfect partner is, that ideal. So, but we then, guess what? Reality says you marry an imperfect person. And so you have a choice. At that point, you can either keep that perfect picture in your mind and tear up the person, or vice versa. And so accept the person. And so again, based on what we talked about, a covenant is you accept the person, you tear up that picture you had in your mind. And so it's a matter of choice. It's a matter of will. And most of us would agree with what the Bible says our partner ought to do. And I know It's easier to do. But a lot of times, we resist our own biblical role. Couples that go to counseling, a lot of times, they'll look across the table, they'll be sitting across, hey, Paul. And they'll look across the table and they'll be thinking, all my problems lie with that person right next to me. But every good counselor, every good counselor knows that that's just not true. And so the counselor will realize the thing that sustains the problem doesn't reside with just one. The answer lies within both of them. So when dealing with a conflict, it's important, whatever it is, when you're dealing with a conflict, it's important to realize it's not who is wrong. Is the issue. It's like what's wrong, and then taking that thing that's wrong instead of having it between you, like we talked, you put it out in front and say, "Yep, there's no disguising. We have a problem."
Standing side by side,
there
it's
it
out
is.
here.
And so, what are we going to do? And so, the cool thing is when each couple or each person in a relationship takes their role, like we said, we understand what the biblical role is a lot of times more quickly than what our role is. But when we both understand what our role is in conflict resolution, the better your relationship becomes. And it's important that you choose that. You make that choice. You know, we all have that ability to choose. Lord talked about imagine, use your imagination, think about things. So okay, this is what I want to do, but that's not necessarily what we should do. So make that choice to make your marriage be the best spouse you can possibly be. And so that's critical. So there's a slide, no slide. So a quote by Ruth Bell Graham, Billy Graham's wife. It says, a good marriage is a union of two forgivers. So you need to meet in the middle. And so there you go.
Yep. So all couples have disagreements. You are not going to meet a person this side of heaven who is in a close relationship with another person who doesn't have disagreements. So what matters is not whether you disagree or not, but how you do it and then how you resolve the conflict. So we're going to look at a few things that we've learned that we don't always put into practice 100% perfectly, but they're just best practices. And one of the first things that Dennis and I do when we are trying to resolve a conflict is we go to God and ask for wisdom. We know very well that we are self-centered people, that and at best, we have our own perspective and we don't necessarily always see clearly. So we go to God and ask for wisdom. And in James 1, it says, he tells us that wisdom, no, I don't do that again, sorry. In James 1, he tells us that he will give wisdom to anyone who asks without finding fault. So it's not like you have to earn the right to get his wisdom. He is saying, come to me, I want to give it to you. It says, I'll give it to you liberally, without finding fault in you. So it's a gift from God. So why do we want God's wisdom rather than our own? This scripture is from James 3, and it says, the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit. I sure want wisdom that has good fruit to come from it. Impartial, we're not usually impartial, and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. Man, we want that before we're trying to resolve a conflict. So let's talk about just a few kind of best practices when you have a conflict. The first one that we're going to talk about, if something is bothering you regularly and just doesn't seem to be getting resolved but is coming between you, it's always best to put it on the table and discuss it. You need to take care of problems as they arise. We know plenty of couples who've been married a long time, or even couples who've been married a short time, and they've got this mountain of conflict between them that they have never resolved. And so pretty soon, they can't even have a conversation anymore because it always leads into one of the conflicts, which is off base to talk about. So if there is something that is continual and it's really bothering you, you need to put it on the table. This doesn't mean you have to address every little thing. You left you put the toilet paper roll on backwards, really ticks me off. Yeah, things like that.
Over or under, that's a big issue.
Over, under, it's important. But if it's a recurring. I read something I thought was a good way to remember it is, beards are cool, mullets are not. So, coming out the front.
Wow.
There you go. Do you see it? Do you see it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
My
Yeah.
bathroom
You-
experience will never be the same.
This is why you came tonight. But, so anyway, yes, so you want to maintain the harmony in your relationship, so if something comes between you, first of all, address it. Don't try to settle an ongoing conflict when you are upset or angry. If something just happened that reminds you of this conflict that has really been bugging you for a long, long time, now is not the time to discuss it. But put it on the table. You might say something like, there's something that's been bothering me for a while that I don't want to become a bigger issue between us. When could we set aside some time to talk about it? Let yourself calm down. One of the things that we learned from earlier groups, the first two marriage groups we had, a lot of the guys said, if you're going to come to me and tell me we need to have a conversation about a conflict or about a problem, first I want to have time to think about it, so you need to tell me what it is. You need to give me some idea what I'm walking into. And part of that, I think, is dependent on what kind of thinker you are, if you're a verbal thinker, if you're a visual thinker. But men generally, from the groups that we met with earlier, said, I need to buffer a little bit. I need to have some time to dwell on it and think about it. So you might say something like, I feel like I'm doing the lion's share of maintaining the home and it feels overwhelming. I'd love to talk about some solutions. So you're not trying to settle it at that moment, but you are addressing it and you're putting it on the table. When can we talk about this? The next thing in Ephesians 4, it talks about speaking the truth in love. And we talked about our words a lot last week, and they are so important. Remember, you're attacking the problem, not the person. And as we keep beating our drum, you want that issue not between you, but before you as a team. So remember, we talked last week about the Bible says your words have the power of life and death. That is a lot of power, y'all. You don't want to wound the other person. I'm not saying sometimes you might not feel like wounding the other person, but it is never gonna bring forth good fruit, and it's gonna last long beyond the time you've settled this conflict. The number 4 is have a win-win attitude. I'm sure you've all encountered this in business relationships or work relationships or whatever, but in the long run, if it isn't a win for both of you, it isn't a win for your marriage. It's the only good option to actually resolve the conflict without leaving some resentment. So win-win sees marriage as a cooperative relationship, not a competitive one. You're not trying to say, my way, we're gonna do it my way or your way. We're going to find a way to do it our way that works in our marriage. A practical example is finances, and this is something that we talked about with a couple just a few weeks ago. She's a spender, he's a saver, and forever they are in conflict about how to spend their money. So the important thing is at first you come together, here's our finances, here's our dream, here are our dreams and our goals, and let's both agree on them, on what they are, let's work to agree on those, and then let's see what's left over. And if there is something left over, let the spending spouse have some money to spend, to blow. They're probably more generous than the saver. And they wanna be able to take people to lunch, they wanna be able to buy little gifts. And if it's not interfering with the goals that you've set together, you need to both come toward the middle for a win-win. Oftentimes, another thing that we hear a lot about is that one couple or one person in the marriage is very social, needs a lot of social time, could have people over every day. And one of them, usually the husband, needs some quiet time, some alone time. Their home is their castle, they want it to just be peaceful, they don't wanna walk in and have a family of 12 there, you know, for dinner. Oh, I forgot to tell you. So just another area where you look for a win-win. Maybe if it is the woman that needs more social time, she does lunches, she does, you know, she works out with a friend, things like that, and then they come to some agreement that together socially, maybe once a week we do something as a couple socially. But again, you need to both come toward the center. And I want to dispel the myth right now that marriage is 50-50. Hardly ever is it 50-50. You know, sometimes it's 70-30. Dennis is coming way more toward how I feel and resolving it to my satisfaction more. And sometimes it's 40-60. You know, very rarely are you really getting this perfect 50-50. I guess if you looked at the overall mean average over a bunch of years, that's the goal. But the point is, you know, that you want to make sure that it's a win-win for both of you. Last thing on resolving conflict ideas, seek first to understand and then be understood. I think we talked about this last week when we were talking about communication. But it's really huge too when it comes to resolving conflict. So commit to first understanding your spouse's need. Why is this area so important? So if we're sticking with the whole, the house is a mess and it bothers me, example I've been giving, you know, for a lot of women, the house is sort of their domain. They feel like it is a reflection of them. And for the husband to understand that I need to tell you that, you know, it's really important to me that the house stays relatively clean. You know, if it doesn't, that is a very stressful thing for me, and it makes my head just spin, and I can't relax because there appears to be so much to be done. It may not be that important to the spouse, but caring that it is important to the other means that they might move a little more toward your end. Remembering that nobody's gonna be perfect, and so if he slips up and leaves his dirty socks there, you're not gonna jump all over him. You know, again, you're looking for that win-win.
Good stuff. So, we're gonna look at a slide. Ephesians 4:1-3 reads, pouring yourselves out for each other in acts of love. Alert at noticing differences and quick to mending fences. So, my life is really not my own. Scripture tells us that, you know, and God's impressed on me quite a bit recently that the more that I give my life away, the more I will live the life that He created me to live. My life is really not my own. And so I don't do this perfectly. I am very capable of having an agenda and being selfish. However, when I slow down and plug into God, I'm more able to, like Rory said, instead of making it 50-50, get over more to where she's at by understanding where she's coming from. So that's huge in terms of resolving conflict. And so the only way I can do that, because I do believe my life is not my own, and when I pour my life out to my wife, to my family, to my community, that's the life I believe God intended for me to live. And so, yeah, and the only way I can do that is like it says in Psalms 1 verse 2 is, you know, a tree planted by living waters, a wellspring that in due season will bring forth fruit. So on my own strength, I can't live that life, and I can't be the spouse that God created me to be, or to just live in that fullness that He created for us. So there are some hindrances to conflict resolution. And for a good discussion and resolution to occur, first of all, you need to be ready. And like Lori talked earlier, if you're angry, or if you're just tired, or who knows, all kinds of things could be going on. You're just plain irritable. It could be your time of the month. You're bound to have a bad resolution to a conflict. So the odds are stacked against you. And I know the Bible says don't let the sun go down on your wrath, and I believe that's very strong, good advice. However, there are times when Lori and I decided, you know what, let's just sleep on this. We're both tired, let's just sleep on it, and we'll talk about it in the morning. And somehow, some way, it's not quite as poignant, but again, we don't kick it under the rug where all the dust bunnies live, because it'll rear its head in some other way later. And so unresolved conflict accumulates. So, but just taking that time, if one person in a relationship, and your relationship is just upset, just take a time out. Say, I want to resolve this, but I just can't right now. And maybe you can't even express why you can't. So if you, the other person knows, your spouse knows that you're good on your word, and you'll come back to that and say, can we just talk about this tomorrow, or tomorrow morning, or Friday? So it pulls back some of the angst, and it gives you an opportunity to have a good resolution to it. So, yeah, I think that's very important.
In your pages tonight, we have attached something called a conflict card, and it looks like this. And we are not saying that this is going to work for everybody, but it may be, if you have a conflict that you have not been able to resolve, this may be something that might help. So you're basically taking the conflict. Let's say the conflict.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to bring it up.
Oh, okay.
The conflict is somebody wants to buy an RV and somebody doesn't. And so
you can guess.
Don't tell Dennis. And so anyway, you take a look at this and say, where do I land on this? Because you can't die on the hill for every argument and disagreement that you have. But some things are, I'm not enthusiastic, but it's really not that big of a deal to me. And some things are over my dead body. And so that is where you're going to find more of a 95-5 situation where you're on your compromise. But we've never used this, but we read it in several marriage books, and a couple people told us that they liked it. So we attached it to your packet tonight, and you can see if it's something that you would appreciate using. Sometimes you have a conflict that is deep and very wounding, and it requires more than just compromise, and it's really hard to find a win-win. It is a deep wound that needs to be healed, and you may very, very well need to get a professional counselor involved, or a mentor couple that is going to walk through it with you for a length of time. Unfortunately, there are some wounds that nothing but time and forgiveness and work will heal. But, there's no magic Band-Aid that's going to take care of them. Don't be afraid to call out for help to somebody. It is so worth it. Don't let a wound just fester.
Good stuff. And so sometimes people are more formulaic than others, kind of the XYZ thing. So it goes like this. In situation X, when you do Y, I feel Z. So, for example, instead of when you're driving down 4th Street with the kids in the back and you're trying to make that light, it seems like it's more important to you that you make the light than it is for our safety. And so, in other words, she's saying in situation X, when you do Y, I feel Z, which is better than saying, you're a reckless driver, although he very well may be. So it's just kind of a little tool, stick in the back of your toolkit, and maybe it'll come to mind when you're going through something like that. So we're going to take a look at the first page here, And the first portion of the page, it's just a personalized description of your unique approach to conflict. And that's up here. It's just, each of you are different, like we talked about, coming from different personalities, different upbringings, all that. And so some people are highly expressive. And so if you've got somebody like that in your relationship, that's one dynamic. The other is the other person may be conflict resistant, and they may try to tiptoe around the issue. And so this is going to kind of let you know where you land on things. And so, hey Whitney, hey Luke. And so I think it's a good opportunity because Lori mentioned it earlier. A lot of times people go through their whole marriage relationship. Some people that were married 40 years attended the first session, and they did this, and this was the first time they ever talked about this stuff. And so it's just like all these bells and whistles are going off in their heads, like, oh, you're, oh. And so if you have an opportunity to talk about this, and not everything is going to resonate with you, but some of it will. And so I think you may have some aha moments yourself. So in the middle of this section right here, your personal conflict challenges, it's just kind of how you're likely to manage conflict when conflict arises. So again, talk about this together, see if it makes sense, any of these make sense to you, or if it fits or if it doesn't. You know, for example, sticking to a plan might be one of the issues. When you don't stick to a plan, you know, it makes me feel like this. It makes me feel like I can't trust you. That might be one example. So I think it's just an opportunity to become more aware of where your potential hot buttons are. So for example, when Lori and I get discussing some of our plans, things we want to do, it could be
Like buy an RV.
Right. That's a non-starter, so there we go, somewhere else. So let's put that issue out in front. Let's put the whole RV out in front. Let's just buy it.
Right.
It says magic pen, I'll just sign the contract. So no, not going there. So no, it's like, I'm losing where I was. Oh, there we were, discussing plans. And so we'll start discussing it and we'll throw out something and it sounds very plausible. And I say, yep, let's do that. It's, in my mind, it's done. It's a done deal. And I'm moving on to the next thing we're doing. And she's only on step 1 of 8 in terms of possible scenarios.
Like, or we could do this. He's like, I thought we settled this.
Yeah,
We're gonna
so-
do A.
I've learned just to sit there and listen and just extend more rope, and she's learned that I'm a little quicker to just to get it resolved. So again, it's kind of meeting in the middle. So again, it's a point of awareness. Please. Say something.
May I tell a story? So,
And since it's blue, this is my section.
It's just popped in my head though. It's so perfect.
Oh, sure. It's a little headier.
Okay, so I used to do all the Christmas shopping, like when the kids were little. I was responsible for getting. How many of you with many kids know that Christmas shopping for multiple children is a lot of work? And so one year I said, Hon, I think it'd be really fun if we did this together. Can we go to the mall in Grand Rapids, which is like an hour away? We can go shopping and we can get lunch and it'll be really fun. We can do it together. And I made out a list of all the people we had to buy for. So we go into a mall and like we went into the end store, like JCPenney was the anchor store or whatever. Walk in, Dad says, okay, who's first? And he's, okay, let's get this for Kyle. Okay, this is for Trevor. This is for your mom. This is for my dad. He goes, okay, I think we're done. We haven't left the first store. It was just such a funny, different approach. And such a,
Yeah, different.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, it's more like hunting for me.
Yeah. I said, we're shopping.
Kill
we're
it, throw it in the
cruising."
cart, and move on. So, all right, that was fun. So, moving on, we want to talk about a situation that can sneak up on you, kind of like that conversation. You know, that could potentially, it's a thing that does sneak up on you. You don't notice it at first, but, you know, when that first baby arrives, that changes your marriage dynamic. And not instantly, it just over time. So, over time, you know, when you
Instantly.
instantly,
It's the first time.
and
Yep, I
both
would go with
and.
that.
Well, Stephen, what do you say?
Change.
So anyway, what can happen, and it happened to us, is your marriage kind of takes a back seat. The woman feels overburdened. She feels amazed at this new life, and it's
Extremely
not.
tired.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
not intentional. The husband kind of gets nudged aside. You know, you did your thing, you did the right thing, and there's the baby, and so go back to work. And so it just kind of can sneak up on you, and so that just that little life needs so much work. And 70% of women after the baby is born report a drop in their marital satisfaction. And again, it's not intentional. She's never felt the love as deep and selfless as this, and you know, it's life altering. And if her husband doesn't go through it with them, it's life altering for him too. So the best thing is when that baby is born, that the husband and the wife experience these life-changing moments together, and happy about the changes that are going on now. When my kids, our kids, were born, I got 2 days, and so okay, thanks, back to work. And so, but now I don't know, you get quite a bit of time. Not that raising a baby in the military is easy. It's a dynamic I'm not experienced. I'm not saying it's easier, but it's, in that respect, it's better. You've got some time, especially in those formative times when mom's never done this before, dad's never done this before, and there's highs and lows. And so if the dad's there with them to experience it, that he has that point of connection that nobody else can feel. So I think, again, this whole section is just be aware that it can sneak up on you. It can be instant too. It does change everything. So the old us just kind of, sometimes you get pushed aside. So again, it's better now than it used to be, but just be aware that that could be an issue.
I think every generation's gotten a little better. Like for our parents' generation, the husband didn't even come in the delivery room. The doctor would come out, it's a boy, or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's better now. And then, like Dennis said, he got 2 days for each of our kids, and y'all get a good amount of paternity time, which is awesome.
Yep.
One of the other things, maybe especially in the military, is that can sneak up on you is boredom in marriage. That especially for the dependent spouse, they've probably moved far away from home. They're away from their entire support system. They maybe have left their career. They've certainly left their family and friends, and they might feel quite alone, while the working spouse is experiencing some, career achievements. They've got adult camaraderie every day, and they are experiencing something great, and they might not even notice that their spouse has lost some passion, lost their interest, and it can be really devastating to a marriage. And I think especially when you're far away from home like this, and you don't have your tight-knit community to draw on that you're used to. So I think in that situation, 2 things need to happen. The spouse who is feeling bored, you don't want to stay there. It's like we talked about in the beginning of conflict. You want to bring that to the table. Man, I just feel like my life is, I actually had this conversation with a gal just about a month ago, and she said, I can only clean my house so much, and I just don't feel like anything I do is of great worth, And my husband's, promoting, and it's going so good for him, so I hate to be a downer and tell him I'm bored. But that's valid and that's important, and you guys are all serving together, that is something that we have really learned that we didn't know previously, and I think most civilians aren't aware that, we're always thanking the service member. Thank you so much for your service. Your families are serving, it's so demanding on all of you. And then secondly, it's up to the spouse that is not bored to reawaken those passions in their spouse. When you were dating, when you were wooing your spouse, you were constantly thinking about what would make them happy, what would make them smile, what brings them to life. So maybe your wife likes poetry, so you buy a book of from her favorite poet, and you read one after dinner or something, and she's gonna be like, wow, what's this? And maybe your husband used to play tennis all the time, and you he hasn't played in years, you buy a couple rackets, you set him up for lessons, or you say, hey, let's have a date night and let's go play tennis together. But don't let boredom steal the joy of your marriage. It's kind of a silent little sneaky thing.
Yeah, and we talked last week about how a man will open up with shared activity. I think kind of goes back to that too, when you mentioned tennis, if that's a thing, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be, do what the guy wants to do, but that's just, I think, one area that could be very beneficial. Similar to boredom, it's drifting, and some couples report that, we just drifted apart. And it's, they just lost touch with each other over years. They're not, their interests have just diverged. And so it's not breaking because of a single cataclysmic event like an earthquake in a relationship or anything like that. It's just this slow erosion. And so, and you kind of can look at the person, depending on how long you've been married, and you just say, wow, who did I marry anyway? And so your mind might start going places you don't want it to go. Ask yourself some questions. Are you thinking about someone other than your spouse? Are you spending less time with them? Less and less time? Are you, is your sexual interest waning? Those kinds of things. And you quit sharing details and just kind of understanding or predicting how they'll react. I'm just not going to share that. So if you answer yes to those, I think it's time to get vigilant. We talked about priorities in marriage, and you need to do a reset, because those things, like Lori said, that boredom, if you don't address those things, they become big things. If you kick those things under the rug, they don't stay under the rug. And so, and I know it's hard, and we talked about making time before. You can't find it. You got to say no to something, and you have to reprioritize your marriage. And that, maybe it's your work that's getting in the way. And I know you're all our career, and I know the demands on you are huge. But still, you somehow got to fight to get that marriage priority relationship with your spouse back to the top. And that may come at saying no to some of the kids' activities. It's just imperative that becomes important again. So, like Lori talked before, do some things together like you did when you were dating, and it doesn't have to be like rewriting the Magna Carta. It's the little things, as Denzel said in the movie he was in. It's the little things. And so, but it won't happen unless you make it a priority, if you do feel that boredom or that drifting apart. So, basically, it's not that you don't care for the other person deeply. You still care. These people report for the other person. It's just that you kind of lost that intimacy, not just physical intimacy, although that can be part of it, just the experiential intimacy of doing things together. And so Genesis 2 says, where husbands cleave unto your wife. And cleave means to pursue with great energy. And it means to cling to something zealously. So reprioritize if that's an issue with you. Sit down and talk, and that's a fair game thing. It's not a fatal error. You have the power to fix that. You have to believe that in your head and your heart. You have the power to make that situation better. It's intentional.
Yes.
It work.
Yes. Yep. Okay, you have been listening for a long time now, so we're going to do a little activity. And for those of you who don't have your partners here, Richard, pull out a piece of paper. We're gonna. So everybody needs to get a piece of paper, a writing utensil, and you do not want your partner to see what you're writing. I don't care how you separate. You can go back to back. You can just shield it with your arm. That is up to you. Yes. Very good. I'm proud of you. Great. Okay. Yeah. Well, then, God is watching you, and I have my little pointer. Okay. The first thing. So we're moving into spirituality, which includes intimacy, not sex. We are not talking about sex again. we have done that. But this is just kind of, do you know each other? Do you know what's going on with each other? So I want you to write down without the other person seeing it, what is your spouse's favorite recent movie or TV show? I like this Matsky, we're using him as a clipboard. It's good. Paul
She's
has-
got your back, literally.
Paul has so many uses. Okay, number 2. What worries your spouse right now? What is your spouse worried about? Number 3, other than you, the obvious, who is your spouse's best friend right now? Can't say me. Okay. Okay, number 4. What is your spouse most proud of doing in the past month? What is your spouse most proud of doing in the past month? Okay, number 5, and the last one. What is the best part of your spouse's day? What is the best part of your spouse's day? And when you're done, you can turn and discuss them. You can even scatter a little bit if you want. Yep. Sam, he is calling for you.
Sam, you can scatter.
Are you scattering or are you just doing it?
How'd you do, people? Good? Hey. Were any of you like, you don't even know me? All right, I think we'll jump back. You may stay where you're at. Reminds me of a meme I saw one time with the Cookie Monster, and whoever his significant other was had given him a present, and he unwrapped it, and it was crackers. And he said, "It's like you don't know me at all." Relevant here. Yeah. All right, so the next page you're going to get tonight is spirituality, which includes intimacy. And so we're going to talk just a little bit about intimacy. Intimacy is just kind of that feeling that is like, you know me, you get me more than anybody on this planet. We understand each other, we are safe with each other, we can share secrets, we can tell each other anything and know that that person will never turn their back on us, and that's intimacy. I love this, this 17th century philosopher Francis Bacon. He says, intimacy, when you have intimacy, it doubles joys and it cuts grief in half. And that has been so true in our lives, and not just between Dennis and I, but having a community where you can share joys and sorrows with, and it really honestly does this. Let's see here. Okay, then there's one more little slide, and I don't even know that this is really true, but I love this saying. It says, you have to walk carefully in the beginning of love, but running across fields into your lover's arms can only come later when you're sure they won't laugh if you trip. And I just love that, even though I'm pretty sure he would still laugh if I tripped, but that's what intimacy is you so trust the other person with everything, and that's what we're going for. So, at the top of your, no, I'm gonna skip that. Okay, at the top, because we're running late. At the top of your spirituality page, it's going to talk about how you feel closest to God. And I am just going to go back and look at this real quickly, and you can kind of see if you can see yourself and your spouse in here. So these are called sacred pathways, and we all relate to God differently, and maybe some of us don't ever really feel close to God. And that's something you're going to want to talk about as a couple as well, if it's important to one of you. But the traditionalists, they love God through rituals, sacraments, and symbols. The visionary loves God by dreaming a great dream to accomplish great things. The socialite loves God best around other people, confiding in them and being accountable to them. The intellectual seeks God with their mind by considering a new theological concept. They're your apologetics people. They're always studying. The caregiver loves God by being compassionate and loving others, even if it means significant sacrifice. The contemplative seeks to love God in a quiet pursuit of journaling and reflection. Dennis and I must each have like 16 journals, and we're forever. I know I had a really great thought, and I wrote it in one of these journals, but I think we both enjoy that. The activist is at war with injustice and loves God by fighting it. The naturalist feels closest to God outdoors in the midst of creation. And the worshiper is inspired by joyful celebration in music. Yeah, so just kind of an interesting thought that, we don't all come to God and love God and relate to God in the same way, and that's perfectly fine, perfectly okay. Just something to think about. Okay.
My turn?
Oh, yeah. So this is just like what you believe about spiritual practices in marriage. And again, just a communication opener, okay? If there are things that you disagree on, you might even want to think of that as a conflict and look at that conflict card. How important is it to you that you agree on this in this area? And just open it up for discussion, put it all on the table.
Yeah, good stuff. So y'all are sitting right next to a miracle. And in your case, you're looking through the phone at them. In your case, you're looking through your heart at Lauren. So, your spouse is a miracle. And so it's just something I wrote down. Lord, help me understand this mysterious, beautiful work you created in advance for me to walk through this life with, also known as my spouse. And, Lori talked about intimacy and being not just physical intimacy, but just that connectedness that's unique, let's call it that nobody else is a part of. And so, just a little nugget to stick in your toolbox. Y'all know that Ericksons have been watching your kids downstairs, and they brought their kids in too to help with that. And it's a great way to train your children up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, because they're doing something together as a family and that's outside of themselves. And so I don't know what it's like when they go back home, but maybe they talk about it, or maybe a couple clicks down the road in a couple years, they look back and say, hey, remember when we were at Pillar and we served as a group? Remember how fun that was? Maybe it was torture, but maybe it was fun. But anyway, they did something unique outside of themselves that takes the focus off of each other, and it becomes a point of shared experience that's unique to them. And so, I just find when I'm struggling the most, it's because I'm focused on myself the most. And sometimes it's legit, you just got to get in there and get after those things and figure out what it is. But sometimes if you haven't got it figured out, just getting together with someone to do something outside of yourself, bigger than yourself, it's just a way to keep moving through a process. And so if you can do that individually, just with your spouse, or maybe as a family, just something to tuck away in your toolbox.
So the last thing we're going to talk about tonight, in the last page you're going to get, is about time styles. And so the Simmons report puts you in one of 4 categories: accommodator, processor, dreamer, or planner. And each one comes with 2 strengths, 2 drawbacks, and 2 challenges. And then so most of us are not going to be like 100% of any one, just like any personality test or anything. You're going to be a kind of a conglomeration, but generally we have one that we tend toward, okay? And so like I'm 71% a planner. You may have heard this already once or twice. Whereas Dennis his highest percentage is as a dreamer. And so.
RVs?
And so I'm planning, what will this cost?
Bus
So,
killer?
but that's a real, but it's a real thing, to how do you differ in your time styles? And so how do you bring that into your marriage and resolve conflicts and make decisions and respect each other's place? You know, that I wanna hear your dreams, about the RV, and then I wanna tell you why we can't get one. No. I am totally kidding, I am not that hard-line. If you want an RV, get an RV.
No, I
But, yeah. But, anyway, so yeah, just another place for you to see that you're different, but that doesn't mean that it has to be a place of conflict. Yeah. So, with that, we are going to pass out your pages and, okay, I'll see if I can say this correctly tonight. We are going to go until quarter till, or
Yeah.
7:45. I
Yes.
learned till from David.
Yeah.
Oh, wow,
Thank
it's
you.
2.
Cause I was like, what?
That was really confusing, wasn't it?
22.
Okay, yeah.
22? 22 what?
Yeah.
22, 23, 24.
It's so funny. So it was one of those things I never even noticed that I said wrong. Thank you all for correcting me.
Where do you find these pages?
I know, it's hard to find them. Okay.
Because one picture, so. I'll just start with one, picture.
Oh.